Hey guys, Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films back again with Doctor Who Classic, where it looks like on the camera we're coming to you live from the sun. I don't know why it does this sometimes, but today it's just decided to blow out all the light in here, so I don't know. Unless I fix that in editing, there's only so much I can fix about that, though. Anywho, last time around we had Attack of the Cybermen. What was that one about?
Well, if I vaguely remember, the Cybermen were trying to fix the plot of the 10th planet where they were going to use Halley's Comet.
Yes.
To blow up the Earth or do something to knock the Earth out of orbit, somehow prevent the destruction of Mondas.
Yeah.
And then they went back to
Telos
there, whatever that home planet was. But there was an indigenous group there called the Cryons who were basically, I'm assuming, based on the fact that they were cryogenic, they were forced to live in sub-zero temperatures. Anyway, it goes along and the Cryons help the Doctor and Perry overthrow the bad guys. But I remember thinking, didn't we comment there was literally a body count almost as bad as Resurrection of the Daleks?
Yeah.
Or was it Resurrection? Whatever that last Dalek one was.
Yeah, it was Resurrection.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was also, speaking of that, there was the return of Lytton, who was good this time, and the Doctor felt bad about judging him based on prior experience where he was not a good guy and worked for the Daleks. I don't hold that against the Doctor.
Yeah, I almost forgot that the whole thing opened up with a scene that looked like, out of a James Bond film or something. They were going to do a diamond heist. They went down in the sewers, but the sewers were basically the hideout of the Cybermen, and then the whole diamond thing went away. And so,
but yeah. But still, it was a good episode, and a much better introduction to the Sixth Doctor. You got more of the sort of goofier, I guess, playful side of him. He's still a lot, but he's not as much of a lot as he was in the Twin Dilemma. Yeah. So that was at least good. And yeah, I guess that was pretty much that. And today we are back around to Vengeance on Varos, the only Sixth Doctor episode that we originally watched when we did the run-through of classic Doctor Who at the beginning.
So whoever chose your original tour through Doctor Who thought this was the best Sixth Doctor episodes?
At least the best introduction to the Sixth Doctor, which they also thought Kinda was the best introduction to the Fifth Doctor.
And we're in trouble.
Well, and here's the thing. I think most people that, even the people that like Kinda, say that's not a good introduction, at least. Yeah. So I hope that's the thing we can at least agree on about Kinda. It's a little much if you're just getting into the Fifth Doctor. Like, you need those first two episodes, definitely. So, other than that, we won't speak to the actual quality of Kinda. And we move on. But, yeah, Vengeance on Varos. I don't remember having strong feelings about this episode.
I'm reading the description there, and that vaguely brings me back to remember it's something, I don't want to say it's the Roman Colosseum sort of thing, but it's something about executions for public entertainment. Is that right?
Maybe. Because I remember there's they keep cutting back to this couple that's watching everything unfold on TV. And I don't think they're ever a part of the plot, really.
Yeah.
They're just sort of watching it. But
yeah. But it's kind of a cross between 1984 and Roman executions in the Colosseum, I think. That's vaguely, again, it's 3-4 years ago when we saw this.
Yeah, it was quite a while ago. That was, I want to say, the end of 2018. So, yeah, it's been quite a while. And the only other Sixth Doctor thing we've seen since then, well, we haven't really seen it. We heard, what was it called? The audio drama. The Holy Terror. That was it. That's the one we listened to. That's the one with Frobisher.
Oh. Okay.
So, yeah. Which there's a part of me that kind of wants to re-listen to that, knowing like 5% more about the Sixth Doctor than I did back then. But I don't know. I don't know what to expect out of this, and we've already seen this episode. Yeah. So, and obviously neither of us have rewatched that reaction since then. Yeah. So I don't know really what we're going to get into on this one. So, you got anything else?
Oh, I just want to warn the viewers that if at any time during this broadcast you see everything start to shake, it's because last night we had at least 4 earthquakes here in the Oklahoma City metropolitan area, the largest one being a 4.4, about 9:40 last night. 5:36 this morning, we had a 4.2, woke us all up. And on top of that, just before 10 o'clock this morning, it started snowing. We're expecting more snow Sunday night. That we record these Saturday mornings, so we're expecting snow Sunday night into Monday. Probably going to get somewhere between 3 to 6 inches of snow here. And for the next 5 days, all temperatures, even the high temperatures during the day, will be below freezing. Here in the United States, that's 32 degrees Fahrenheit, 0 degrees Celsius. And we're going to actually have a couple of days where not the wind chill, but the actual temperature will be below 0 Fahrenheit. So
yeah,
one of the reasons I'm wearing my sweater, because it's cold.
I don't even have the fan kicked up to 3.
And he's
so
wearing his t-shirt.
Oh, yeah.
I don't get it.
And the current temperature is 12. And my phone says there is a wind chill warning from the National Weather Service. So that's just on the lock screen on my phone. I don't even have to open an app for that.
If you're not familiar with the wind chill factor, it's basically what they say, what it feels like if your skin is exposed to the wind and the temperature. So it's 12 degrees above 0, but it feels probably like 2 or 3 degrees below 0 because the wind will actually chill your skin so that it feels colder.
Yeah. So
you get that a lot here in the Southern Plains.
Yeah, and the earthquakes is the reason why there's not much on that shelf anymore. Because while I was not in bed when those earthquakes hit, I then did go to bed, and I thought, you know what, I don't want a lot of glass above my head. And thank goodness for that, because again, at 5:30 this morning, another earthquake hit. So, by the way, and we talk about this. Obviously, these earthquakes are not as bad as, say, the earthquake that hit Japan at the beginning of the year. But they are bad in the sense of we don't get these. We're not supposed to get these. We're in the middle of the United States. This is not a thing that's supposed to happen.
No.
And hasn't happened for a little while.
That being said, the worst earthquake in American history is not the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. It was the 1811 earthquake right on the Mississippi River. There's something called the New Madrid Fault, which is even apparently worse than the San Andreas Fault. The earthquake, which again, fortunately, being on the Mississippi River at that time, very sparsely populated in that area. But the earth cracked open so wide that the southern portion of the Mississippi River actually flowed northward into the hole that was created by the earthquake. So we are in the last, 8 years, we've probably had a couple of swarms like this. So we've had 5 or 6 already in the last 24 hours. But in my Facebook memories feed, it keeps popping up that we had about 6 or 7 years ago, had a real swarm, just like 2 or 3 a day over several weeks. The largest one, though, that we've ever had in Oklahoma was a 5.7, which is kind of what we would call a minor earthquake out in California. So the stuff that we're getting here does not do the kind of damage that it does out in California, because they have huge cities right on top of the faults, where ours are just outside of the metro area.
Well, yeah. Scares the hell out of the dog, though. So...
yeah, they're frightening.
Yeah. So, anywho,
there's
also dates when we're recording this, but nobody cares. Yeah. So, and I also was tweeting about that a little bit last night. That we're not supposed to really have these, and half the time Actually, most of the time, the last time we really had a bunch of earthquakes was all just fracking and nonsense and everything. Thought that died down a lot.
Well, it did, because despite the fact that for 2 or 3 years after the earthquake started, the oil and gas industry here in Oklahoma denied they had anything to do with it. I can't remember who it was. Some commission in Oklahoma looked into it and said, well, it's not the fracking per se, because that's a situation where they pour superheated water down into the old oil wells to try to get out the old, almost solid oil. But it's a saltwater injection or something like that that's causing the earth to do this. So they decided to shut down all fracking operations to see if that would affect it, and sure enough, the earthquakes tended to disappear. So they're trying still to say that there's no direct connection between fracking or saltwater injection and earthquakes, but it's too much of a coincidence.
Yeah, so it's a thing of, we didn't have them, and then you started this, and then it happened, and then you stopped it, and then it didn't happen. So anyway, all this to say, we're curious about Vengeance on Varos.
Yes.
So
let's get to it.
Yeah, let's just go.
When did we last see a decent execution?
Last week.
What?
The blind man?
That was a repeat.
It wasn't. You're thinking of that infiltrator. He wasn't blind. Not at the beginning, anyway.
Yes, he was. I'm going to sleep anyway.
Can't. Got a vote.
Well, do it for me.
Do you want Pol Corp's calling here? Do you, Arak?
How would they know it wasn't me voting?
I'd tell them.
That's it.
Can't you at least do like an absentee? Just tell her what you would do.
What is the matter with you?
Well, every time you sound confident nowadays, something terrible seems to happen.
Does it?
To be fair, he was always like that.
Well,
You're a reasonable man.
Oh, yeah.
The price of your commodity.
I forgot about this thing.
That is enterprising. You're perhaps the next governor will be more sensible than the other two.
I am the governor. You deal with me.
But tonight, you must place yourself at the mercy of the votes of your people. Should they not agree with your stubborn stance, you may be obliterated.
He's a little too goofy, but...
SpongeBob's grandfather?
That's interesting. You simply really mustn't threaten me. You need me for what you hope to gain here.
If I do not succeed one way, I favor another. Enough talk. I would wish to witness the suffering moments of this fool governor.
Nothing like a good old rigged democracy.
I ask that we agree to hold out for what is a fair price for our principal marketable resource, that of Zyton ore. Those who wish to fight alongside me for a prosperous tomorrow, vote yes to a 10% reduction of our food rations. Those who wish for full bellies today and nothing to eat tomorrow have the option to punch their no button.
Right.
And thus nothing was accomplished here. That is, I suppose, a fault.
that's 3 losing votes in a row.
Yeah. Next vote we'll see him blasted out for sure. No one's ever taken 4 bashings from that cell disintegrator
I
thing.
wish you'd leave him alone.
Why? He's the worst governor we've had since... Well, since...
Since the last one.
Is the governor no more?
He survived. Just.
We must arrange.
It's a weird way of staying in office. Just, well, you survived.
We could get at least 10 minutes of tension out of his apprehension and fear.
It's novel, I suppose.
I'm sure the video of his execution would sell. You said we must export or die.
Yes. Yes, I did. Very well.
arrange it. And backed.
Sir?
Thank you for the suggestion.
I feel like this episode gets more topical with every passing year. Just adding social media onto it as well.
While the rest of us toil without hope, the officer elite enjoy power and luxury.
Lies!
Varos is what it always was. A prison planet. A colony for the criminally insane. The descendants of the original officers still rule. By fear. With a spectacle of death our only entertainment. That is what Jondar found.
Not only was Australia a British prison colony, but so was the state of Georgia here in the United States.
ZS plus 101 EQ.
C? Z.
Yes.
Don't even get me started, Doctor.
The power conversion factor is stable, so why aren't we receiving full transmission of that power? It's a possibility. May I?
What is it?
Just smack the console with the book.
The thing that depresses me most of all is that the transitional elements have lost the capacity to generate orbital energy and must be replaced.
Well, how long would that take?
No time at all. If we can obtain enough Zyton 7 to reline the trans-power system, the TARDIS will be like... Well, there she was.
I was wondering, it's like, how do they get to the planet again? It's like, oh, they need the thing.
We all have some parts of our mind that we consider unworthy. Some
Shining
memory
the
that
light on
makes
her,
us
jeez.
shudder.
Isn't exactly certain when obliteration takes place. Stand clear of the execution site. You have your anti-hallucination helmet.
Yes, sir.
Good. Switched on?
Yes, sir.
Good. We wouldn't wish for one of my guards to succumb to the phantoms of the punishment dome. Not with all of Varos watching.
No, sir.
Oh, yeah. That guy with the hair. I remember people pointing out he was on Game of Thrones. I don't remember if he's been in anything else, though. Now you pissed him off.
Hello.
Hi.
Not interrupting anything.
I know how this place works. I know you are but a product of my mind. And I choose to resist you to know that you cannot exist.
Quite right.
Control, control. My anti-hallucin switch is suffering malfunction. Permission to withdraw.
That's what we've come to fix, isn't that right, Perry?
Yes, sure.
Let me have it. Come on, give it to me now.
Doctor, careful!
I can't believe they didn't tie up his legs.
7 credits a unit. When the engineers of every known solar system cry out for his product to drive their space-time craft.
How many people are making time machines?
Return to our craft. Alert the council to have a colonizing force sent to this sector.
Right.
Alright, you got like ancient Greek sentries. You got this giant sea slug, and the rest of them look like 1984 fascists.
Yes.
I do have to admit, though, I had forgotten how well they had disguised his lower body.
Yeah.
They're too close.
Help me turn this round.
We'll blast him out of existence.
Kill laser connection.
Golf cart here. 2 miles an hour. They can run faster than that.
No, this is efficient. That way they won't be tired in 10 years when they catch up with him.
Oh, you insist?
This way.
See, they were so close to being caught by this thing.
I will explain. I'd sooner leave whatever this place is and get back to the safety of the TARDIS. Ship. Spaceship.
Something like that. Thunder's agreed to help us escape through the guard's entrance.
Alright, turncoats. No, the turncoat.
Great, they're getting away.
Yeah, but wait till they meet the guards at the end of the tunnel.
No, they'll be all right. This batch of rebels are good.
I like that one. The one in the funny clothes.
See, those two are just us watching this now. It seems lovely.
I like this.
All the more impact when they are captured, tried, and executed. A Revo leader and his woman and intruders from another world. There's not any prime-time viewing here, but the recording of their final agonies will sell on every civilized world.
He sounds like Sean Connery. Got that sibilant S.
You must go to Dagobah.
No sign of life, sir.
Dead as death.
How long should I hold?
And cut it now.
Alrighty, that's part one. You know, slow, a deliberate, slow burn. Very interesting, though. Especially because I just don't remember any of it. So,
I have to say, we haven't really seen a whole lot of 80s contemporary styles, but the hairstyles of the escaped prisoner and his wife, that's like the background characters in Wrath of Khan, you know, the women with the big hair and the guys with the mullets.
Yeah. And yet, what seems to be a very topical still episode. I mean, just everything. And see, it's not that, you know, years ago when we watched this in 2018, it wasn't, but something about now, in the year 2024, I mean, technically, this was, it was around in 2018, but since the rise of stuff like, I don't know, TikTok and stuff, just how much we see, because I know, obviously, social media, you know, we see too much of the people of our world, but with TikTok, I feel like that really exploded too. And just on, like, you know, just people watching terrible things. The fact that people, you know, in our world can film something like, oh, I'm going to go prank people at Walmart. And it's like, why would you do that? Walmart is already miserable enough. Why make it worse? You don't need to do that. But, like, here, it's like I feel like, or watching, you know, the circus we call politics, you know, which there's stuff with that, but even just with, you know, just the two people, you know, sitting there, they vote for something, they basically cancel each other out, and nothing really gets accomplished, and they're just sitting there and they're like, you know, hey, let's watch someone die. Isn't that entertaining? And it's like, I don't know, it's, you know, and this is not an incredible comparison because this episode is actually good, but I remember I was watching a video about Batman Forever, the third of the Batman movies, and there was a whole thing in there about, like, the Riddler sort of taking over people's minds by getting them hooked to television and everything. And it's like, you know, it literally basically just, like, glues your eyes to TV, and that's how he controls everyone. And in the 80s, that was one thing, you know, with TV being on, you know, well, not even on the rise, but just being as big as it was. Nowadays, it's even more, like, apt with, you know, phones and the internet, which is a terrible thing to say. We're looking at two screens right now. I have my phone on my, on the table here, but, I don't know, and dog's barking, I don't know why. But anyway, so yeah, it's an interesting thing watching this and being like, this is one of those things you watch, it's like, this was made a long time ago. I hate how topical it is, though.
And whereas you're focused on the media aspect of it, I'm focused on the politics of it. You know? because I'm watching these incredible representations of what today are the far right in America, and it's appalling that people could actually find this entertaining,
Yeah.
And there are so many people in politics today in the United States who are not in politics to govern. They're here to disrupt, and like you say, get headlines, grab clicks, do all that sort of. So
yeah,
it's a horrible melding of both politics and media, and it's disturbing.
Yeah. So, and because I'm curious to see how the rest of the season is going to shape out, because between this and Attack of the Cybermen, it's like this is honestly a strong showing for the Sixth Doctor. And not that previous Doctors didn't also have that, they did, but this is such a strong beginning for what is I don't want to say a controversial Doctor, because I think a lot of people will still like him, but I'm sure people will say he's an underrated Doctor or something like that, or that maybe a lot of people might view him as sort of a mess of a Doctor, but honestly, this is shaping out to be really, really good. So it's just unfortunate how he actually started in the Twin Dilemma.
Yeah, and again, although there haven't been a huge number of bodies so far, there seems to be more of who's the new producer at this point.
John Nathan Turner.
Okay, he seems to have made a deliberate turn towards more violence.
Yeah,
and of course, this is also the time again. There's a lot of violence coming out in the movies, so it's. I'm not saying that you can't use violence, but some of this seems almost gratuitous.
Yeah.
I mean, the torturing of the guy there at the beginning, and again, the body count in Attack of the Cybermen. This is way more violence than we're used to.
Yeah, like we're not really in the Star Trek era, and even though Doctor Who came first, like we're not really in that sort of that sort of clean sort of utopian feel that Star Trek has. That while Doctor Who is obviously had a lot more like darker, grittier sets and everything. Just as each Doctor goes on, it does get more and more like, or even something like with the Third Doctor's era being very sort of James Bondy. But I feel like, and now granted, I guess I haven't seen too many James Bond movies, but I feel like there's a difference between a body count in a James Bond film and a body count in like a John Wick film,
Yeah.
Where like there's a very clear difference between that, not that James Bond can't have that, or something, but like with John Wick, a lot of people die in John Wick.
Yes.
A lot of blood spurts, and it's it's fun to watch these action scenes and stuff, but it's very much a difference where it's like, this sort of feels like the same decade where the Terminator or RoboCop or something, even though RoboCop is probably the biggest. Like I remember watching it being like, half of the stuff they do I feel like you can't do.
But RoboCop was very specifically done as a parody of the violent stuff to basically say, if we don't watch what we're doing, this is how we're going to end up. But this is not parody. This is, we're going to take this guy, chain him to a wall, and shoot lasers at him, and hopefully at one point we'll create enough suspense that people will tune in to watch while we obliterate him.
Yeah.
That's just cruelty.
Yeah, and even with, the effects of this show, they haven't always been, the pioneering show in, special effects, but, you just have a light that shines on this guy, and he sells that he is being tortured.
Yeah.
And then, you have this light hit someone else. He just, they just do a cross dissolve, basically, and he's just, fades from existence. But even still, it's like, well, there goes another guy, So, and even, like, here at the end, like, Colin Baker is really selling that he is trapped in the desert, sweating to high heaven, but also, like, I'm also seeing, like, some of that, like, like, you know, he's got the sweat from all the heat that he is imagining. I also feel like they're sort of caking on a bit of sand onto him to really sell it. So it looks pretty bad. Yeah. So, and I'm sure in part 2 we'll get that the classic thing we've had over the past 5 seasons or so of weird alien thing explodes or is, you know, basically like, you know, squeezed so that all the juice comes out, you know? So and as goofy as he is, it is still a really good effect on him. So
He moved.
Reflex.
Maybe he isn't fully dead.
And he soon will be. Here comes the acid bath.
Oh, I hate this bit.
Well, that's always good. You don't want to splash that too much.
Yeah. Who else will buy our only asset?
Why not find other mining companies who will refine Zeiton ore on better terms? Who will pay the 7 credits per unit I ask? Why not? More.
The people of Varos have voted to accept Syl's final terms. You, as governor, must impose their will or suffer death by default.
After I extract the truth about this girl and her companion, the doctor.
I was gonna say, since it's a component for time travel, you'd think the Daleks would, like, offer, but I guess the Daleks would conquer.
The most...
Oh! Well, from a certain point of view, he didn't kill them.
But now death is my only friend. My constant and loving companion. Can you feel his cold presence?
I don't want to, thanks.
You should. Your life is even more at risk than mine.
The doctor. He's escaped.
How? He's dead.
Not dead. He was just pretending to be.
He's alive?
He's a really good actor.
Good.
Do these two not have jobs? The old school Catholic execution.
Hello.
This is the one thing I remember is the Catholics.
I'm sorry.
Don't remember them at all.
So would I be.
Well, good, we brought the Catholics.
The medieval Catholics at that.
Yeah.
Hello.
First time.
Let us observe the experiment of the tissue transmogrifier. I am interested in science. I do not wish to impede its progress.
I think this guy needs to be in a frying pan with some garlic butter. It's a good look, Perry. She's a porcupine, a hedgehog. Not sure what that is.
I don't know.
Doctor's friend.
Why don't they sell this? Like, sell this technology.
Do you still experiment on your own person?
Not anymore.
Why? But in the past you exposed yourself to much danger, I think.
Yes? Why do you ask? How do you know?
Your mask.
There's a reason you look like the Phantom of the Opera.
Gonna hotwire a go-kart?
Fast as lightning.
That's more like it.
I thought he was dead.
No. Pay attention.
My insulted person can stand no more.
You also can't stand.
It's no good. Where are we?
I mean, that thing only has like 2 laptop batteries to power it, so...
This whole place is cracking up. The guards must be as confused as we are.
I think we're into what they call the end game. Not many trialists reach this stage.
Could that be where the escape exit?
Only one way out.
Presumably.
What are we waiting for? I think perhaps we should try another route.
Oh no, the floor is lava.
Yeah. I mean, there were perfect passages to go over.
I see you have a keen interest in the flora of Varos, Doctor.
Just a passing fancy.
It'll pass faster than you think. Kill him, wait!
This man has insulted me.
So kill him.
For my humiliation.
No!
Let's get away from here.
A dramatic end for a very dramatic man.
That's better. Mirror, come on, mirror!
Man, these guys are good, because this is the goofiest thing ever.
Report of Zyton 7 traces found on asteroid Biosculptor. Invasion of Varos cancelled.
Aww.
20 credits per unit.
I think he needs more than water, Perrier.
Like cyanide.
Perrier.
Come, Perrier.
Oh, that's awful.
What about that transmogrifier thing you put me in?
I think we'll leave the Varosians to work out their own idea of justice, Perry.
Well, this all just kind of worked out.
No more executions. Torture. Nothing.
It's all changed. We're free.
Are we?
Yes.
What should we do?
Dunno.
That was me at the end of Attack on Titan. I'm finally free. Now what do I do?
I have no idea what he's talking about.
Nothing good. But that's a whole other... You know what? That's my one comfort is none of those fans are going to be in the Doctor Who comments, so... Okay.
Alright, slowed down quite a lot here in episode 2.
Yeah.
But, they were trying to work through some really, heavy exploitation of the masses by colonizers. So, I mean, I get it, but yeah, a lot of action in the first episode, not so much in the second.
Yeah, so.
But I have to say, the actor who played the governor was very menacing in the first part and very acceptable as the compassionate ruler in the second part.
Yeah, so. I mean, this is going to be one of those where it's like, I feel like we talked about most of it, like, between episodes, It just because it's like, with episode 2, it's like, it's pretty much just continuing all the ideas set up in part 1, so. But still, yeah, a very good, interesting, topical story. From all different points of view of, the political aspect, just the view of the people and everything. You can even look at it from a social media standpoint and everything as well. So,
but also there at the very end, there are several movies from the 70s, even TV shows and things like that. One of them, there's a Robert Redford movie, I think, called The Candidate, where he runs for political office having literally no experience whatsoever. And then when he manages to win, at the very end, his staff's going, all right, what do we do now? And he goes, I I have no idea. And that's very similar. A lot of times, countries who overthrow their oppressors, I mean, not to make too fine a point, but here in the United States, after the American Revolution, they weren't exactly sure what to do. We stumbled for almost 10 years under the Articles of Confederation, and only then did we realize that didn't work. We couldn't be literally a consolidation of independent states. There had to be some federal kind of system. There had to be, somebody who was a president over the entire country. There had to be a justice system where the laws of all the states were essentially the same. And it's only after they ditched the Articles of Confederation and wrote the Constitution that the United States as we know it now came to be. So, there is a lot of that. What do we do now? I don't know. We're just making this crap up as we go along.
Yeah. Because, I mean, there's some of it that will still happen. The guy's going to go back to the mines, because even though the whatever they were called, the thing that was trying to get the Zyton 7, even though they had found traces of it on asteroids and everything, it's still like they still need all of that. They're still going to buy as much as they can from Varos, so that will at least go on. But yeah, it's like, what do you do? There's no more executions. There's no more entertainment. There doesn't really seem to be a culture on this planet, So how do you? I mean, at the very least, it's like they seem to be just starting from zero. They don't seem to have books. They don't have other TV shows or anything, and where I guess with America, I mean, American culture, I guess it was already pretty much established just from being so distant from Britain, just geographically, So all of that over the years, the colonies evolved, but with Varos, they're starting from absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So,
and it would be an interesting follow-up at some point to go back to Varos, because I'm also reminded slightly of what happened in the early 1900s, especially right after World War I, where oil was discovered in places like what is now Saudi Arabia and Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, and places like that. Whereas the developed countries, the industrialized countries like Great Britain and the United States and France and some of the others, went into the Middle East and essentially ran those, what at the time were not developed. I mean, they were developed culturally, but they didn't have any kind of real infrastructure. And it wasn't for 50 years or so before the people of Western Asia began to say, listen, we don't need Americans to develop our oil. We've been doing this now for so long. We know how the technology works, and therefore we will begin to nationalize, or we will take over the operations, and that they would, kick out the Americans and the Europeans and everybody else. Unfortunately, during that time, there was also this undercurrent of fundamentalism, which ultimately in 1979 was the Iranian Revolution, where now you have this incredibly fundamentalist society that has a huge amount of money, but they're literally global pariahs because of the way they treat their people. Very much like this. We have complete control over every aspect of society. I mean, seriously, they have literally fashion police, that if you wear something that is unacceptable to the reigning government, they can literally put you in prison, or, as happened, I think, late last year, a young woman actually died in police custody simply because she was not wearing the prescribed form of dress for a woman. So, I mean, that would be an interesting follow-up to this, to go back to Varos and say, how did it develop?
Because, I mean, it is one of those things with the governor, having this sort of, I guess, a character arc throughout the episode of, eventually, he gets to the end because he's seen, I guess well, I'm not even sure. It's like, it's not that, at the beginning of the episode, he was, all in on, how Varos worked, but it was just, he was sort of resigned to that, you know, because there was no way that he could possibly change that on his own. He was subject to, the molecular destruction beam and the vote of the people, and it's not until you bring in this, rogue element like the Doctor that can happen. So So yeah, and he's looking at it, if that hadn't happened, eventually he would have died because of the molecular beam, and someone else would have had been forced to take the position of governor, and they would just go through the same thing that he did, and probably every governor before him went through.
Yeah.
That the system's broken, but it's just so inherently strong that you can't do anything about it.
Now, you said something about an actor who was in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Owen Teal.
Yeah, as Maldak. Yeah. He was on Game of Thrones as one of the people at the Night's Watch, basically. I can't remember if he's been in anything else, but the people tell me in the comments. Yeah. But
I haven't seen Game of Thrones, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, and there's no reason to anymore. That's so sad, Like, I will force you to watch Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, until the cows come home. But Game of Thrones, it's like, it's not worth it anymore. Yeah. That's a whole other conversation, though. But anyway. So yeah, this is such an interesting episode, and definitely one that, the first time around, I definitely didn't catch any of this. Like, I don't think I really thought about it too much. Yeah. So,
I think all the comparisons we made were to 1984, Big Brother is watching.
Yeah.
But here, it's much more the explosion of social media.
Yeah, well, there's that, and because even 2018, we were deep into the new American political landscape and everything. Yeah. But there's something about I don't know why we just didn't sort of connect that to here in 2018, whereas now in 2024, maybe we're just so beaten down by it that it just has kept going all these years since we watched the episode, that it's terrible. And I don't even want to know how much this sort of resonates with the British and their political system. I mean, look, I don't understand our own new political environment that we have. I cannot even fathom the British one. It's like they have to me, from the outside, it looks like they just have a new prime minister just every so often, just like, hey, we have a new one. It's like, what? When did that happen?
Well, the major difference is in the United States, there are simply scheduled elections every 4 years. There are term limits on the president and vice president.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, not on the House of Representatives or on the Senate, which there probably should be as well.
I would say so.
Okay. Theoretically, if I recall correctly, there are term limits for the British Prime Minister, but under certain circumstances, a surprise election and an early election can be called if they lose a vote of confidence in the Parliament, which is the House of Commons and the House of Lords. And again, it's been years since I've studied that. But overall, instead of a president, they have the monarch, currently King Charles, who, although most people would assume that he's simply a figurehead, he does have certain powers, certain political powers, but he certainly does not run the government. The Prime Minister and the Prime Minister's political party run the government if they are elected.
Yeah. Isn't it that the monarch... I may have heard this once, I don't know, but isn't it true that the monarch has power to declare war for Britain?
I don't think so anymore. That may have been something that Parliament has ultimately changed. But yes, at one time, yes.
But it's like... Because I always thought that was just kind of weird, because it's like, they don't... The monarch doesn't have, the big, I say this, that's the way it is anymore. Yeah. So it's like... So that seems like such a big, power to have.
I think what they have now is very similar to what the United States has. The President of the United States cannot declare war. He does have something called the Emergency War Powers Act, which allows him to essentially engage the military in a defensive measure in a case of an emergency. But after 30 or 60 days, Congress must then approve. Of course, the most famous instance of this is 1941, when Imperial Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. the president immediately went to Congress and says, I asked for a declaration of war against Japan. Congress said, yes, absolutely, they've attacked us. And because we declared war on Japan, then Germany and Italy declared war on us, so Congress then had to declare war on Germany and Italy.
Right.
Very similar probably in Great Britain after the invasion of Poland, because I think Poland was an ally of Great Britain at that time, and Great Britain said, if you attack Poland, we will step in. Again, I'm not a scholar of that, so if I've made any incorrect statements there, let it go.
Is there any time where the president has sort of urged Congress to go to war and they haven't? Does that happen too often?
No, but
because I would imagine, like, if the president is doing that, there's a general reason that probably everyone would see.
But after 9/11 in 2001, there was a huge debate in Congress as to widening the war, which the war was declared on Afghanistan because it was decided that Afghanistan had been harboring Al-Qaeda. And therefore, the United States essentially doing this military action in Afghanistan was warranted. But then when the president said, yeah, but we also think that perhaps Iraq was behind it as well, there was a huge debate over the military forces in Iraq. Now, the first time, back in the early 90s, what they called the Gulf War I, that was because Iran invaded Kuwait. Kuwait was an ally in the United States, and literally most countries around the world stepped in to push Iraq out of Kuwait. But the second one, after 9/11, that war resolution almost, if I recall correctly, did not pass, because there were a whole lot of people that said, look, we do not have proof that Iraq was behind this. And ultimately, when we got into Iraq, it was proven that there were no weapons of mass destruction. And, yes, we did ultimately remove Saddam Hussein from power, but ended up making the situation much worse.
This is the most I've talked about politics in 5 years, by the way. So
we try to stay out of it.
Yeah, pretty much since...
On film, anyway.
Yeah, definitely on film. But, like, probably the most since, like, college, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So, but if anything, that just shows it's a very fine episode to, get the discussions going. Yeah. And I do feel a little bad that we're not fully discussing the episode now in, this section of the video, but I do feel like pretty much everything is, like, set up in part one. Yeah. So,
now, just going to throw this out there. I think what structurally is wrong with Vengeance on Varos is the 2 45-minute episodes. This is one of those where they have enough for what would have been 3 episodes, but they had to stretch it to 4 because that's the format. I think they could have condensed this down to what would have been 60 minutes instead of 90 minutes, and would have had a very solid, very impactful presentation.
Yeah. It's one of those things, like, I know there's someone who took the Obi-Wan Kenobi show and actually cut it into about a 2.5 hour movie instead of the 6 episodes that they put on Disney Plus. And his reasoning was, well, this was originally supposed to be a movie, and they kind of stretched it out, so can we sort of chop it up? And I wonder if you could do that with some of this.
I do like the idea of the director's cut. That's one of the things that I really don't care about film, is that in most instances, probably more than 95%, the studio has the final say on what the public sees. But I do like the idea that later a director can go back and say, that's not the story that I was telling. And, for example, what was the Justice League that ran for 4 hours?
Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Okay. There's a lot of stuff that he put back in it that didn't need to be there.
That, for being 4 hours, the last half hour, which was an epilogue, is completely superfluous. And most people will agree, because that's like when you have like Batman's visions of the future and stuff, like, he could have cut that and it would have worked out. But when you see like his vision in that version of the film, and then you compare it to the 2-hour Joss Whedon cut that they spent, millions and millions of dollars to add in jokes that aren't funny. And it's like, ooh, I don't know. And it's one of those things too, it's like, because I imagine, back then, they looked at all the stuff that Zack Snyder did and then panicked, like, we can't put this in a theater. I feel like you could do that now. Like, especially after, everything we've seen with streaming. And, Oppenheimer was 3 hours long, and that was released in a theater just fine. We didn't watch it in a theater, we watched it at home.
But I would have watched it in theater if for nothing else to see the gigantic screen and the effects and everything.
Yeah, watching Oppenheimer, like, the biggest thing I think is the test of the bomb. I think that's sort of the one where it's like, okay, I can see going to the IMAX and watching this. You get the suspense in there from the complete surroundingness of the IMAX. Other than that, it's I think someone said, it's like, I'm not entirely sure why this was why it was sold to you gotta go see it in IMAX. It's a lot of people in rooms talking. And that's what it is for 2 hours and 45 minutes, and then there's 15 minutes of a bomb that you should go see. So,
but again, I've mentioned this before. There's one of the reasons I like directing live theater, because I've got a script, which you really can't depart from that much. You've got a group of actors and the director. And when I say to the actors, I like what you're doing, but that's not the vision I have. If you want to play that, go off and direct it on your own sometime. You're playing my vision of this script. So, they are my, they're my paints, they're my tools, that I have the actors tell the story that I want to tell as a director.
Yeah, so there's not studio notes. Yeah. You are the studio, first off, especially now.
Yeah, in this case, I am the producer as well as the director. But,
but at the same time, that's true, because even like, because it's difficult, because the Justice League is like the biggest example of something like that, but I don't know, it's a difficult thing, because there are so many times where you watch a movie, especially nowadays, and it's like, okay, I can see the sticky notes, where you had a room of old white people in suits. And they look at it, they write down some notes, and then the movie is altered. And there is a lot of that where it's like, ooh, you just let it kind of play, just let it go on its own, and maybe, sink or swim. And that goes into a whole other problem with the industry and everything. Yeah. So, but I could see with this, where we would normally say you could cut it down to 3 parts. I think probably the only thing is that, like, going through, like, the illusions and the domes and stuff, I feel like that just didn't quite hit, because it's like, I'm not sure. It's like, I don't feel the danger, the threat from that as much as they probably wanted to. Like, there's the threat of the lasers, the guards, even the random transmutation on, change you into a different thing. Like, that's all there, but something about going through and seeing, like, the illusions or just the plants, one touch and you're out. It's like, it didn't quite hit visually where the rest of the story was hitting in the script. So, but other than that, again, a fine episode, and I'm hoping that this continues, because this is a very good showing for the Sixth Doctor. After, again, I don't know how long we're gonna harp on it, but it's just after such a terrible introduction, So, I don't know.
All right, what's up next?
Next up is the Mark of the Rani.
And I've heard about the Rani for years now, and I guess we're finally going to meet her.
Years and years we've heard about the Rani, and, like, I know, like, the Rani is, like, in the top 3 of, like, villains people want to return in modern Doctor Who. And, the first one is always Omega. Apparently, the reason Omega can never come back is because that character is specifically owned by that writer. So, and I guess it's just a thing they can't work out a deal like with, Terry Nation or his estate to use the Daleks.
And my understanding is the Unearthly Child in the 3 episodes that follow it cannot be reused now because the family of the guy who wrote that will not release it. Something like that?
Yeah, they had a whole thing where they had every episode of classic Doctor Who on the BBC iPlayer, and it's everything except those original first 4 parts of An Unearthly Child. And it's specifically the guy... It's not the guy who wrote it, it's his son. And he's just being completely awful about it. And I don't remember the full situation, if he's just trying to get more money or if, it's like a patent troll. He's just trying to, get as much as he can out of it. But either way, he's being very uncool about releasing that one. So hopefully they can get that going, because that would be good. And I imagine it's still here on BritBox, so I don't know what the problem, or maybe it's not, I don't know. Yeah. So I guess we've never watched it on BritBox. We only watched that episode the one time. That was a long time ago.
That was the first time that I came on, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I was sitting in the living room with that one.
Yeah, because I didn't know how to do anything. This was back. I was still on my laptop, and I wasn't using the table or anything, so I had to quickly scrounge together how to record with a second person there. So yeah, it was a different time, but like Doctor Who, it was an experiment. Yeah. So anyway, you got anything else?
I got nothing.
Then that is basically it. With all that being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. There's a bunch of links on screen if you want to go click around any of those. There's a playlist with all of our classic Doctor Who reactions, as well as another playlist with all of my modern Doctor Who reactions if you want to go check those out. There's also a subscribe button and a Patreon button on screen, as well as other links in the description if you want to go check out any of those. See you guys later.